Hello, welcome to the France 24 debate. I'm Mark Owen. Tonight we're focusing on the hostage situation in the Middle East. There's been a delay in the expected release of some 50 Israeli hostages. The deal is still being finalised in Qatar, where senior Hamas leadership is based. A high-ranking member of Israel's Mossad secret service is there talking to Hamas. The deal, as publicised thus far, includes 50 hostages being swapped for 150 Palestinian prisoners. Described as terrorists by Israel, they're mainly women and youngsters aged between 16 and 18. The hostages to be freed are also women and children. The airstrikes and the ground offensive mounted by Israel against Hamas has continued this Thursday. The word from Israel is that the exchange won't happen before Friday. So bear in mind, Hamas said this would happen today, Thursday, so we can say there is many a slip possible betwixt cup and lip. In the meantime, the families of the hostages, they are waiting. Their campaign has kept the plight of their loved ones in the headlines. We will be examining the situation in this programme. What are the sticking points? Will this be the pattern going forward? There are perhaps a further 190 hostages after the first 50 who are set for release. And of course, that will happen over a 4-day truce period, as is, we are told, negotiated so far. Let's introduce our guests for this special programme. Here in the studio with me, you have Eberhard Kienle, who's a research professor at the CNRS, that's the Centre National de Recherche Scientifique, and also at Sciences Po. You are a specialist of the Middle East, and we're grateful you're with us, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Joining us from Tel Aviv is Yossi Kubavasa, former head of the research division at the Israel Defense Forces Intelligence Corps, an Israeli intelligence and security expert. Yossi, thanks for being with us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us by Skype from Hebron in the West Bank is Francesca Bori, a journalist at La Repubblica and the Yediot Aronoth. Francesca, I hope my pronunciation is up to scratch. You have a story to tell, and I will let you tell it in a moment. First, let's take a look at our report to give you a sense of what has been happening.
They'd been hoping for some good news. Instead, it was another day of waiting for the relatives of the hostages that are currently being held in the Gaza Strip.
For 47 days, we've been experiencing an emotional roller coaster. Today is no different. We hope at least the children will come home as fast as possible, because they're running out of time. They cannot wait any longer, nor can the elderly, or the sick, or the injured.
The truce between Israel and Hamas, which was struck on Wednesday and initially slated to come into effect on Thursday, is now expected to start on Friday morning.
The beginning of the pause will be 7 a.m. Friday, the 24th of November, and it will last, of course, as agreed, for 4 days. And the first batch of civilians to be released from Gaza will be around 4 p.m. of the same day. They will be 13 in number, all women and children, and those hostages who are from the same families will be put together within the same patch. Obviously, every day will include a number of civilians, as agreed, to total 50 within the 4 days.
In exchange, around 150 Palestinian detainees will be released. It's unclear what caused the delay, but a Palestinian official suggested it was purely logistical. Patience was also running out on Thursday in the West Bank, where many had been anticipating the release of the Palestinian detainees.
I came to Ramallah to celebrate. Unfortunately, we were all shocked by the delay of the deal. I don't know what happened.
Many of the Palestinians who are expected to be released are being detained without trial over suspected attempted stabbings, stone throwing, or having contacts with what the Israeli authorities consider to be hostile organizations.
Let's bring in our guests to give us a sense of what they think is happening and what will happen next. Eberhard, can I start with you here in the studio, calling on your expertise and knowledge of the Middle East? Were you surprised that this didn't work out the way we all thought it would this morning? Were you surprised there was a problem?
No, to be very honest, I wasn't surprised. Now, of course, in the best of worlds, this would have happened today, but we see it's a logistical challenge, certainly, and not only a logistical challenge, also a political challenge. And so I suppose it could be expected, although it could have happened as well. Now, again, will it happen tomorrow? Hopefully, yes. I think it would be the best solution for all of us. But again, I suppose we will have to wait and see.
a question of waiting and seeing. Now, in terms of what goes wrong, we're not in the room for the negotiations. So in a sense, we're guessing here. But in terms of what that might mean, in terms of what could happen, in terms of what goes on in these exchanges, I mean, clearly there is a lot to discuss. It's not just a question, if we want the hostages back, give us that. It's a question of the timing, a question of what the concessions will be.
Well, obviously, yes. I think it's part and parcel of a broader issue, yes. And the broader issue is, of course, what will happen after these 50 hostages have been released and the 150, or perhaps more or less, we don't know yet, Palestinians. What will happen after 4 days or 5 days of truce? What will happen after that? And all this, of course, I suppose, is part and parcel of the same deal.
Indeed, indeed. Bear with us for now, Eberhard. We'll sort out this sound issue. You've got a sound issue going on. We'll get our technical person to sort of sort that out whilst I'm speaking to Yossi Kupavasa, who will bring in next. Yossi, an Israeli intelligence and security expert. Yossi Kupavasa, can you give us some kind of a sense of how these negotiations may have gone? We're told that a senior Mossad agent is there in Qatar. This conjures up all kinds of images in our minds as to what is going on. But give us a sense of how this might have gone.
Well, the head of Mossad was in Qatar, and he was supposed to get the names of the hostages that are going to be released. And I guess he has been provided with those names. And this is an ongoing uncertainty, because you never know who's going to be released on the next day. You don't know what are their conditions. You don't know if there are going to be families or separate people. And there's a lot of question marks every day, and we haven't even started the first day, so it's we know what to expect. And I agree that the question is beyond just what's going to happen in the 4 days that were already agreed upon, whenever they start, but what's going to happen on the 5th day, on the 6th. It may last for 10 days, and definitely Hamas is going to do any effort they can in order to prolong it as much as possible, so that they will have a possibility to force Israel to change the goals of the war, and instead of trying to eliminate Hamas, Israel should be, according to them and according to the Qataris, that they play a role of they play as if they are mediators, but in fact they are part of Hamas in this game. They want to see this as the end of the war, and Israel wants to continue it and eliminate Hamas. So this is the biggest issue that still awaits us.
Indeed, and of course the hostages that remain there, of course, still could be at risk. Can I just clarify something for you, Yossi? You mentioned about keeping people together. In the report we played before we started speaking, Majid al-Ansari, the Qatari foreign minister, was saying that those hostages who are from the same family will be put together within the same batch. Now, he said it. Of course, there's no guarantee that will happen. That's the issue. Yossi, do you have fears for those hostages who aren't part of this initial 50 that have been basically said will be part of this initial exchange over these 4 days? Because clearly there could be as many as 190 or even more who are still there somewhere with some group within Gaza.
Yes, of course, there are many fears. First of all, it's not clear whether Hamas knows where all the hostages are, because some of them, as you said, were in the hands of other groups, and some of them are also not in the hands of any group, but some mob that took some of the people. So it's difficult to know where are the people. Secondly, some of them were already murdered. We saw the Noa Marziano, one of the lady soldiers that was murdered inside the Shifa hospital by Hamas.
That was Noa Marziano, yes? Noa Marziano.
Noa Marziano, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's we are definitely very worried about the conditions of the hostages, and that's why we decided to make this stop, because we wanted to make sure that at least the children and the women and the elderly are able to be released, and we don't have to worry about them. But that is against our plan of war. We wanted to continue the war until we finish the job and eliminate Hamas. But we understood that since we don't know what's going to happen with the hostages, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, there was a sword hovering over their throats. So it's we had to stop a little bit and enable these people to be released, and we pay a price for that.
Okay, Yossi, thank you. Finishing the job, that's echoing what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. After the 4-day truce, the war continues, is his line that he's maintaining. And it's worth mentioning now there are some 14,000 civilians being killed so far, 6,000 children among them, which is a shocking figure, which obviously is brought.
According to Hamas.
According to you took the words right out of my mouth, Yossi, with that remark. According to the Hamas Gaza Health Ministry, I think the images, though, perhaps backing up what they're saying. Let's bring in Francesca Borri, who's in Hebron in the West Bank. Francesca, journalist with La Repubblica and Yediot Aharonot, the Israeli publication. Francesca, tell us where you are. I'm reading here you're with Israeli activists protecting Palestinians from settlers. Tell us where you are and what's happening there.
I'm in Masafer Yatta, south of Hebron, so south of the West Bank. And Masafer Yatta roughly means in Arabic, in the middle of nowhere. It gives a little bit the idea of where I am. Well, you see the background, I'm sorry for that, but it's the usual, house of Palestinians after a raid, and it's a little bit upside down. But actually, there are Israelis here. Yes, they have shifts, basically. They come from all over Israel to protect Palestinians from radical settlers. And, well, it's moving because now they are, out of the door altogether, having dinner. And the Israelis I'm with tonight are basically all grandchildren of Holocaust survivors and German Jews who moved back to Germany and came here after October 7 because they were somehow victims of the attacks against the Jews in Germany following October 7.
They fell victim to anti-Semitic attacks in Germany.
Yes, in
the
Berlin.
Wake of that.
In Berlin. And
that's
they came
incredibly
back
sad.
because, yeah, and they came back. They came to Israel because this is their home, but they came straight here because they said, okay, if this is our home, if we are basically able to, solve it, our problems, and the first one of the main one is, the settler issue. And so they are basically protecting Palestinians. There are no international activists now. There are only Israelis. And when I asked them why there are no, European activists, they said, because this is our problem. And when settlers come, we want them to hear Israelis speaking Hebrew, because they have to understand that this is, our own countries, the country of everybody. And so we will just speak with them and speak in Hebrew. We are not going to speak with them in English.
As I'm understanding, what your situation is telling us is that in spite of everything that is going on, there is still this issue where Israelis and Palestinians are working together, looking after each other and working to have a better future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Palestinians are not only Hamas, fortunately.
Okay, well, that is something that is positive. Francesca, give us a sense of, because the other side of this equation is that there'll be 150 Palestinian prisoners released. What is the word on that where you are? What are people saying there?
Of course, the issue of Palestinian prisoners is, a key issue for Palestinians. So there are always, we know, celebrations where a Palestinian prisoner, even, somebody who killed, even whoever is the prisoner, there are always celebrations, doesn't matter. But in this case, so let's, leave aside for a moment the usual celebration that basically the Palestinian Authority also, the Palestinian Authority said, told Palestinians not to celebrate in any case. Nobody's happy. And I would say, that especially the West Bank, I guess Gaza as well, the mood is not the mood of October 7. When everybody basically looked at the massacre, completely overlooking, the atrocity, of what happened. And October 7 was viewed as a triumph for Hamas and for Palestinians by everybody, even by opponents of Hamas. It was, really awful to be here, even leftist Palestinians, non-violent Palestinians, whoever you talk to. It was a triumph, not even a success. They said, this is our biggest opportunity ever. And then, slowly.
Sorry, Francesca, can I stop you and clarify? Are you saying that the people around you, they actually reacted positively to what happened on October the 7th? They actually, in fact, were actually in favor of what happened. They were, I'll use the word celebrating, perhaps that's the wrong word, but you tell me.
No, I think, and it was very, very difficult for journalists, to challenge a little bit Palestinians. And again, I'm not speaking of usual supporters of Hamas, I'm speaking even of moderate Palestinians. There is no way to make them think and also speak openly about, okay, but did you realize what happened on October 7? It was silent. I mean, really, you couldn't get an answer. You couldn't get an answer. It was, I've been here for 15 years. It was astonishing for me,
Is that because they were ashamed of what happened? Is that they were shocked at what happened? Is that why they were silent?
No, I don't think, they know very well what happened. Even if, the kind of image, of course, that we see is different according to the place where you are, Here you don't see the same image that you see in Israel or in Europe, not all of them. And probably, it was, like a race, you show them an image of a kibbutz, and then they show them, another horrible image or another, and you try to tell them, okay, this is going nowhere, what's the point, Also because Palestinians have always said, I'm speaking of usually non-violent Palestinians, and they always said that, violence is a cycle, and then, it stays with you. Maybe with violence you win, but then violence stays with you and with you in your community. This is what usually they say, to settlers. So I said, and now you don't say the same to your guys? How come? Well, 45 days after the beginning of the war, still there is no answer. I think, also Palestinians have a lot to think about. And now the point is slowly, at least, they are realizing, that this big success that was, is the idea that, okay, Gaza is going to have a new government. Maybe even the West Bank is going to have a new government. And maybe there will be even sanctions against the settlers, as Joe Biden, wrote in the Washington Post. So somehow, says, okay, it was a terrible price, but we got something. Now this something is disappearing, basically, because basically there will be no day after, there will be no Gaza. And so Palestinians are starting, off the records to say, so what? So what?
Francesca, can I stop you there? Thank you very much indeed. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Francesca Borri of La Repubblica and Yediot Aharonoth, the Israeli publication. Eberhard, can I bring you back in? Eberhard Kinder from CNRS and Sciences Po, specialist on the Middle East. I think we're getting a sense there, on a positive side, Francesca, among Israelis helping Palestinians, working together. That's one aspect of what's happening. On the other side of that, people reacting with, well, almost condoning, celebrating what had happened, but without actually knowing what happened, then discovering and perhaps going quiet. And that sort of maybe changing the tone. And then the other side of it is that you have these Israeli settlers perhaps taking advantage of the situation to move in and create more chaos in the West Bank. More examples of how volatile the whole situation in the Middle East and how any one thing could perhaps affect what happens next in terms of hostages.
Well, certainly. I think there are so many variables that we don't quite know. Now, I think what we need to watch is indeed what's happening tomorrow and what's maybe happening the day after tomorrow. We will see how many hostages will be released. We will see how many Palestinian prisoners will be released. And then I suppose, as it was mentioned a little earlier, it may indeed be that for Hamas, we have also seen that Hamas is not only Hamas, because there is the Islamic Jihad, there are other groups involved. Hamas does not necessarily control the situation entirely. So we will see to what extent those who are, in a sense, the allies of Hamas in this particular situation, how they will react. But I indeed could imagine that it's in their interest to drag out things a little bit longer, and not only of 4 or 5 days. In any case, they got another. They got more hostages, and for the Israeli side, of course, getting released only 50 is not quite enough. Now, on the other hand, of course, and that's another caveat, at least the Prime Minister could point to the fact that he, and of course, the cabinet, the war cabinet, the security cabinet, the entire cabinet, that they try to do something. Which then, of course, after a couple of days may also justify that they will take action again, and that military action will be resumed all the more forcefully. Yeah? So we don't quite know this. On the other hand, yet again, we may imagine that in these 5 days something happens. There is pressure, of course, on the Prime Minister from inside Israel, as we have seen, and in fact he's reacting to that pressure. There is also pressure in the other direction, by those who really want to go to war or who did not want to have this pause, truce, or whatever you call it. And there is international pressure. So what will change in these 5 or 6 days, we don't know. Now, just a gut feeling is that in 4 or 5 days, not that much normally changes. We have seen that this has been dragging on for more than a month now. So the guess is rather, but again, I mean, with all caveats possible, that probably military action will be resumed, and that the Israeli forces will resume bombing Gaza.
Because Benjamin Netanyahu has been clear after the 4-day truce, it resumes. And there's word from the Hamas armed wing spokesman calling for escalation of the confrontation with Israel. I'll give you the name. It's Abu Ubaida of the Izz el-Din al-Qassam Brigade, saying that we call for escalation of the confrontation with the occupation throughout the West Bank and all resistance fronts. So there we have it from both sides of the equation. There calls for.
But I think at this particular stage of the conflict, it's not surprising that everybody tries, of course, to rally his troops on the one side, on the other side. So what they say, they need to say. I mean, if you're Israeli Prime Minister at this particular moment, you need to say that. If you represent Hamas at this particular moment, you need to say that. What will happen afterwards, after 4 or 5 days, or what's happening in parallel, either in Qatar or in Cairo or somewhere else, is another issue. So we don't quite know, and we should not trust politicians all the time.
I hear what you say. Are you suggesting we should take this with a pinch of salt, as we say in English?
We should. We should indeed. We should indeed, yes.
You understand, from my perspective, it's hard to do that.
No, I think you're perfectly right. Yeah. But it is not to exclude that indeed both sides will harden their stance and that things will continue as they were.
Thank you so much. It's a very balanced view that you have on these things, Eberhard, and it's very much appreciated. Yossi Kupavasa, I hope you're still with us in Tel Aviv. I'm coming back to you, sir, for more. Can we just double check on the figures? You rightly pointed out that the figures that I was quoting, 14,000 civilians dead, 6,000 children among them, are from the Hamas affiliated or run Gaza Health Ministry. And of course, on the other side of the equation is the 1,200 lives that were taken in atrocious circumstances in the raids of October the 7th by Hamas and other groups in southern Israel. So just getting all that out in the open so everyone who's watching knows exactly what we're talking about and where we're coming from. Yossi, in terms of what happens next over these next few days, next few hours, the important times, the fine-tuning of the deal, what needs to be done, do you think? What do you think is really happening?
Well, first of all, I would say that you shouldn't use any grain of salt in order to understand what the leaders are saying. They mean what they say. Netanyahu means that we shall resume the fighting, and Abu Ubaida, that is the symbol of the Izz al-Qassam, the terror wing of Hamas, means what he says. He wants to see an escalation on other fronts besides Gaza. And we are dealing here with terrorists. And after the October 7th, we learned that we should take them at face value. If they say that they are going to carry out an attack, they mean that they are going to carry out an attack. And that's exactly what we are going to expect to see after the deal is coming to an end. We're going to see a resumption of the war effort of Israel in order to make sure that we get to Abu Ubaida and to Yahya Sinwar and to Mohammad Deif, all the leaders of Hamas, and either arrest them or kill them or kick them out of Gaza. They still have the opportunity to say that they surrender and want to leave. That's an option. If they don't, they definitely cause more harm for the Palestinian people, not only for the Israelis. The Palestinians are going to suffer because there's no other way to fight in where we are already in the Gaza City or in the southern part of the Gaza Strip.
Yossi, I hear what you're saying about people have the option to up and leave if they choose to. It has been seen, though, in the past, since October the 7th, as the war has continued, that people leaving often end up in the line of fire and getting hit, which is one of the great tragedies.
No.
You deny that happens?
No, that is not happening. Those who decided to move into the safer zone area that we have designated for them are safe and sound. Nothing happens there, and they get their the humanitarian aid they need, and everything else that they are looking for.
But we have seen people trying to leave being hit, say, by the Rafah crossing, that kind of thing. There's news image showing it.
The Rafah crossing is not relevant to this area. It's far from the area we designated. And the Rafah crossing is between Egypt and Gaza.
Indeed.
There's nothing to do with us.
Okay. We beg to differ. The language that Netanyahu is using and the language that Hamas is using too, as you pointed out, is leading towards more conflict. This is, perhaps in some people's views, a threat to the hostages. Should Netanyahu at least maybe sort of cool things down a bit?
We believe the opposite. We believe that the more pressure we put on Hamas, it's better for the hostages. And the fact is that they were ready to have this deal that we are now going to implement just because they were under a lot of pressure. We kicked them out of Gaza City from all the centers in Gaza, and they felt that they are under pressure. And they needed some pause in order to regroup and hope that this is going to be the end of the war. They're wrong. It's not. And the most important thing here is that I think that the way we did this deal, moving forward in a way that pleased the Americans' demands, is extremely important to guarantee that we have the American support for continuing the war. And I think the Americans, and so should the French, understand that anything but eliminating Hamas from Gaza is going to be a victory for Hamas. It's going to sound like something that is going to inspire all kinds of radicals all over the world. And it's going to be a danger for the regional stability, for the global stability, and for the security of the people in the West.
I understand and hear what you're saying, and I've heard that line coming from Israeli sources many times. But you mentioned America's support. America's support has been somewhat changed since the numbers of children being killed became public. That is something that surely must disturb you. That America's thinking, hang on a minute, you need to change your tactics. You need to stop doing what you're doing.
No, that's not the case. And you could have listened to the spokesperson of the White House, the National Security Council, Admiral Kirby, who explained.
Biden asked you to aim in a more focused way. He asked you to be more careful with how you were carrying out the attacks.
We are aiming in a very careful way because this is the only way we know how to fight. That's and I'm saying it as a retired brigadier general in the military. So it's that's the way we fight. We fight according to the rules of war, the law of war. That's the only way we know how to fight. Actually, in most cases, we even go farther than what is demanded by the international law. That's the way we fight. The numbers coming from the Hamas, and they have their interests, of course, because they believe that the greater numbers they are going to put forward, then it's going to be more pressure over President Biden to tell us to stop. But I think the Americans understand very well the game, and this is a game played also by Qatar and by Turkey and by Hezbollah in Lebanon and by the Iranians and by the Houthis that are launching rockets and missiles against us, and by the Iraqi militias that are putting pressure on the Americans in Iraq and Syria. All of this is the name of the game. They are trying to put pressure on Biden in order to tell us to stop, but President Biden stands fast.
And thank you, Yossi, for that summary, because you've really done very perfectly for me. You've shown how this whole thing is starting to affect more and more people and spread geographically. Can I pause you there and bring in Eberhard for a quick comment before I go to Francesca in the West Bank? Eberhard, over to you.
Yes, I mean, I understand that, of course, the Prime Minister and the various representatives or spokespersons of Hamas, that they do not only, well, that they do indeed, to an extent, they tell us what they think and what they would like to do. And now, of course, we also know that politicians, well, do not always tell us what they will do the day after tomorrow. But the more important issue is what you see mentioned right now. There are other actors in the game. So there is not only what the Prime Minister wants to do, there is not only what, again, I mean, he does what, I mean, he has to sort out differences in his coalition and among his supporters. And Hamas cannot only do what Hamas wants to do, and again, Hamas is probably a very divided organization. So I think it's important to see what will happen in the next 5 or 6 days, who will try and put pressure on the ones and the others. And I think this is, in fact, the key issue. Again, with the caveat, that maybe not that much may happen in these 5 days, and then the war will resume. Well, we will know a little more when we may reconvene here another time.
Indeed, and it's always a pleasure to see you here, sir, to get your opinions. As we're talking, news coming in on the Wise Service, trusted journalistic sources that we use here at France 24. Palestinian doctor says 27 dead in Israeli strike on a UN school in Gaza. This is just the latest as it is literally dropping. Let's bring in Francesca Borri, who is in Hebron in the West Bank. Francesca, you've given us a sense of what's happening there. I take it when we hear the words of Netanyahu, we hear the words coming from Hamas about keeping this conflict going. How do people react there? What is the sense that you get from people in Hebron where you are?
When Yossi was saying, that basically Israel has to eliminate Hamas because Hamas is inspiring, extremists, basically all over the Middle East and even beyond the Middle East. Yossi, you are an expert of Hamas, you are an expert of Islamists, and you know very well that Hamas, well, first of all, is not just the Al-Qassam brigades. Hamas is a complex movement, but Hamas is an idea. So, you can kill Yahya Sinwar tomorrow. Maybe you will get it. You will have another leader. You can kill all the members of Hamas Politburo. You can kill all the fighters of Hamas. You will get another Hamas. What is inspiring extremists everywhere is not, Hamas. Is the occupation. Is the injustice, And the point is, I agree with Israel when Israel says, because, I'm based in Kabul, I'm based in Afghanistan, and I'm always, in countries where there are jihadis. I agree. The point is, Israel is only the first line, and we, Europe, we, the West, we are just the second line. Because the point is, first, you see this anti-Israel, feeling that sometimes turn into anti-Semitism. Absolutely, And second, go to Sheikh Jarrah, go to Jerusalem, in these days, and you will see that they are not only against the occupation, not only against Israel, now they are all against Europe, against the West, against the United States, against all of us. So this is what is inspiring extremism everywhere, So the point is, what do I see around, in the West Bank? It depends, it depends where you are. If you are, well, if I'm here now and I see Israelis and Palestinians together.
Just one point to make it clear that Gaza was not under occupation until the 6th of October. We left Gaza in 2005. So it's
you didn't leave Gaza, not even under international law. You control the borders.
Francesca, be true at least. I know that you've been to Gaza. So it's these people fight
under international law. You know that there is a debate under international law that Gaza can still be considered occupied because you control the borders.
Law. The point is that the people in Gaza, they want to replace us in Ashdod, in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa, in these places. That's what they want. They don't fight for against the occupation because there's no occupation in Gaza. They want to. From the river to the sea, as they say. That's what they want.
How did we reach the brutality of October 7, And how did we reach a point where even...
Incitement
and hate indoctrination. How did we reach a point where even non-violent Palestinians don't recognize the brutality of 7 of October? Because this is what scares me.
Incitement, hate indoctrination. Exactly that. Incitement and hate indoctrination. That you prefer to be...
These are Palestinians who read Gandhi. These are Palestinians. I'm speaking of non-violent Palestinians.
By name. I know all the Palestinians. There are many good Palestinians, of course, and non-violent Palestinians. But all of them are exposed to hate indoctrination and to brainwashing with incitement. That's the problem. When you get to the point where people are ready to carry out this kind of massacre of the 7th of October, of everything they did there, I want to repeat it, you understand that this is not less than real hate indoctrination in ISIS Nazi style. That's what it is.
You know that we have a minority of indoctrinated guys, and then we have a majority, of Palestinians who are exasperated.
Hamas represents
but
something
can
like
you tell me why this morning I went out? To go from Ramallah to Jerusalem this morning, it took me 4 hours. Because at the main checkpoint, they were saying, oh, cross by foot. No, go back, cross by car. No, go back, cross by foot, cross by car, cross by foot. 4 hours, come on. This is the occupation. Every day, these little things that are nothing. That are nothing. Now, okay. Now let's go back to the question. Let's go back to the question.
Yossi, Francesca, I'm pausing you there if you don't mind. It's interesting to hear this real discussion.
Let's go back to the West Bank. Just your question. What I see in the West Bank now. It depends. So here I see Israelis and Palestinians together. Let's remember it. I see Israelis and Palestinians here together. Now, if you go to Jenin, you see a disaster. But let's focus on Ramallah. Why Ramallah is always quiet? Why Ramallah, is always, whatever happens, is... well, the reason is because in spite of the occupation, in spite of everything, in Ramallah, the life is normal. In Ramallah, you can have peace through development. You can have peace through economy. You can have peace through wealth, peace through investments. Ask yourself, Yossi, why Jenin is always, the little Gaza of the West Bank, and Ramallah is always quiet. Can we choose the way we choose for Ramallah?
Just for you to know, the Jenin city was not in the refugee camp, is relatively flourishing. The problems are in the refugee camp. That's where we fight all the time. Same in Tulkarm, same in other places. These are the refugee camps.
So also the refugee camp. Can we choose the Ramallah way also for the refugee camp of Jenin? Can we choose the Ramallah way?
We are trying to choose the Ramallah way. We are shot at from in other places. It's not that we don't want to. We were trying very hard to give the Palestinians the best life.
Yossi, Francesca, let me pause you, please, and bring in our guest in the studio, Eberhard, with an observation. Yossi, Francesca, thank you for that frank exchange. It was illuminating, and I think underscoring, Eberhard, many of the real problems that are day to day.
Yes, indeed.
What is happening in Gaza right now?
I don't think it's for me to engage in this debate at this particular moment, although I have my opinion on these issues. But I think what we really need to be concerned about is what comes next. Now, we already played with a couple of scenarios, and one of those which seems to be very likely is that indeed the war will resume after a couple of days. Now, what I would just like to add to that is that the idea, and it has been mentioned already, of eradicating Hamas seems to me a little far-fetched. Hamas is not only an organization and also a divided organization. Hamas is not only alone. There are other organizations, smaller ones, or groups, as we said earlier, which are maybe not entirely politically motivated. So we got quite a few actors around, but they all have in common that indeed, as Francesca said, even if their leaders and even if their militants are eliminated today, they will grow again in this present atmosphere. Now, the question here is not who is right and who is wrong. Of course, that's another issue, of course, we can debate. This has been, to an extent, been done already. But the question is what everybody thinks is right and is wrong. And there, of course, there is no agreement. So what we will see probably, and there has been a very interesting paper by one of my colleagues, Nathan Brown, who has, thought about what might happen to Gaza after a military, say, victory of Israel. And indeed, one of the options is that we will see just low-intensity conflict, that we say we'll see. Well, we are talking about terrorism. We'll see more terrorism, maybe at a smaller scale, maybe in different ways. So it is not so the military victory is not a real solution. Now, the question is what will happen later on, and there are sort of confusing signs coming out of Israel, which is not surprising because, of course, the coalition in power, it's different people who have different opinions, but at one stage, of course, they will have to settle on what they want to do in or with Gaza at a later stage, together, of course, with the other actors, with the local actors, with the Palestinians in Gaza, and not only in Gaza, but also with the international ones who are supposed probably to foot the bill. So there is an issue here, and I don't think that we can just simply think that if there is military victory, that this will resolve the question.
Indeed, it often raises more questions than answers, doesn't it? That kind of
if
issue.
There is. If there is.
First
issue. There will be. If the war goes on, obviously, considering the military means available to Israel on the one hand, and to Hamas and its supporters on the other hand, obviously, we can easily think of a military victory, at least at a seeming victory. But then what will happen afterwards in terms of low-scale violence, we don't know, yeah? But in any case, I don't think that one should bank on that. And then the question is, if there is military victory, who will run Gaza afterwards? Will it be run by Israel directly? Will anybody else step in? I understand that the Palestinian Authority is extremely concerned that they do not want to come back on the back of Israeli tanks into Gaza because it would create for them precisely the same issue that we are facing now. The other issue, of course, and I just mentioned that very briefly, I mean, there are these ideas of expelling Palestinians from Gaza to Egypt and elsewhere, which obviously Egypt doesn't want, and one understands. They are not Egyptians, yeah? So there is no reason why they should go to Egypt. There is no reason to expel anybody. But even if they were expelled to Egypt, and that's what President Sisi, although I often disagree with him, but that's where I agree with him, it would just displace geographically the issue to Egypt, because certainly they would not be happy in Egypt. Certainly the Egyptians would have as much trouble to contain activities, military and paramilitary activities, as the Israelis have had recently. Although here again, I think one should add one thing, that there was, as we see, depending on the various Israeli sources we are listening to, maybe more could have been done for the defense along the Gaza border. Yeah. So, I mean, anyway, knowing Israel what it is, there will be investigations, there will be inquiries, and these inquiries in the past have been extremely sound. So we will certainly know more about this at a later stage. Yeah, but in any case, there would be a lot of difficulty for Egypt, and it will not resolve the problem. So there must be some sort of idea and there must be a debate, of course, what will happen in and to Gaza after this war.
Eberhard, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back to Yossi Kubavasa and to Francesca Borri joining us from Tel Aviv and Hebron in the West Bank. Yossi, I'll start with you first. And we're getting towards the end of the debate now, Yossi. So if you can keep this answer quite short, I'd be grateful. What happens next? Who runs Gaza afterwards? And let's not forget, of course, there are still hostages there somewhere in the system.
Yeah, well, I hope that the end of the military operations is going to be also accompanied by the release of the rest of the hostages. But yes, the question of what's to happen next is a big question, and I fully agree with what Eberhard was saying, because that's an unknown. I can tell you what I hope for. I hope for a soul-searching process in the Palestinian society. That has not happened, not in the West Bank and not in Gaza. But after this war, they will have to go, I hope so, in some sort of a soul-searching, and we shall find some new leadership that's ready to live next to Israel in peace, and is going to be ready to really take care of the well-being of the Palestinians.
Should there be soul-searching from both sides, Yossi?
Sorry?
Should there be soul-searching from both sides?
Yes,
Israel and
Palestinian.
Palestinian. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
What does Israel have to learn, do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we have to learn that willful blindness is a wrong policy. And we have closed our eyes to the ongoing hatred and incitement that was growing up on the other side, and didn't believe that this is going to get to the point where it got on October 7th. We should realize that this is the case. And we should work together with the Palestinians to see how we can work out these problems in order to make sure that this hatred doesn't rise up again. And any political issues that we have between us should be solved in a way that is going to
Yossi,
be...
I need to pause you. Sorry, I need to pause you because we're out of time, but I need a quick comment from Francesca, please. Francesca, you got 30 seconds. Give us your sense of the situation.
The real turning point will be when Mahmoud Abbas, who is 88, someday will resign. And at that point, you will see Hamas against Fatah. I mean, fighting in the streets, Hamas against Hamas, Fatah against Fatah. And until we have a new Palestinian leadership, there is no one to talk to.
Francesca Borri of La Repubblica and Yediot Aronot, thank you for joining us from Hebron of the West Bank. Yossi Kubavasa in Tel Aviv, thank you, sir, for joining us, Israeli intelligence and security expert. Thank you from Sciences Po and from CNRS here in France. Eberhard Kienle, great to have your thoughts and input, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
And of course,
it was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir, very much indeed. Pleasure shared. We are watching for all developments, of course, on the situation regarding the hostages, but we'll bring you the latest as soon as it happens. Stay with us here on France 24.